as well. Joining organizations, socio-civic organizations, be selective. Don't join everything, that there is. There are quite a number of them that are just, quite frankly, for getting together and just talking and gossiping, and that's not really where you want to put your energy into. But they have names like Women's Alliance and Commerce, and so you think this is a great thing to do, and you spend $300 to join, and you go to the lunches and you spend for those, but they're really not giving you more business. They're not giving you the exposure you need, and so you need to be strategic. And this goes for men too. I want to make this clear, I'm not putting down organizations like Kiwanis or the Masons, and those are entirely different. Those are more service organizations. I'm talking about, you all know what I'm talking about, right? Like these companies and organizations that say, well, we're applying for 501c3, but they never quite get it. But they're having these lunches and bring your business cards. It's a great networking opportunity. Be strategic. So let's focus first on the most important thing that you want to do when you have a business. What's the number one thing you do when you first decide, okay, I'm going to have a business, whether it's a brick and mortar, a consultancy, or virtual online? What's the first thing an entrepreneur should do? Anyone?
Have a business plan?
Well, I mean, in terms of, besides the business plan, what's the first thing you should make sure you have?
Find your target
Your
market.
target
That's my
market.
second one.
Okay.
You're on the right track. You should have a what in this day and age? A website?
Oh,
Oh,
website.
yeah.
A website. You would be surprised at the number of people I know who say, well, everything's word of mouth. And that's great. I am not trashing word of mouth advertising. It works well, but you need to have a website. And it should look professional, and it shouldn't be cluttered, because a lot of times people say, I'm gonna spend thousands of dollars on a website, and they have so much stuff on their website, people either get bored in the first minute trying to find things because they're not user-friendly, or the website doesn't even speak to what their specialty is. They've got advertisements up, they've got links for everything, and I tell people, you can go to Weebly, you can go to Wix, you can go to GoDaddy. You don't have to spend a lot of money. You don't have to hire a web consultant. A lot of them have free templates, and they're super, super easy to use. So I don't know how many of you know this, but I have clients and I help them strategize how to make the most of whatever their seed money is. Maybe they have a friends and family round that they use to start their business. And one of the common mistakes that I see them make on their websites is that they're super fancy and they say, I'm not getting the traffic, I'm not getting the SEO. Why is that? Well, I can tell you, first and foremost, there's no video. Video is huge. The average website has most people, when they're shopping, let's use retail. When they're shopping, they spend less than 30 seconds on a site. Did you know that? Less than 30 seconds. If you add a video component, that increases 45 seconds, they will stay longer. If you can keep them then for over that minute, what are the chances are that they're gonna start clicking around, right? And sometimes you'll see, I wish I had a PowerPoint, but sometimes you will see when people click on a link, that'll open up a new page and they lose your website. Horrible, horrible. You wanna make sure that when they click on that link, it opens up a new tab, but it stays on your website. Why? Because they're going to forget about you once they go to that new site. Everything you're doing, when you're uploading pictures, did you know that if you put your company's name when you upload the picture onto your website, that it attracts more SEO? Search engine optimization. Is everyone familiar with that? A lot of people don't know that. They just upload pictures and pictures. Everything you're doing is trying to draw traffic. Everything from your social media, and I mean personal social media too. And you should really have a footprint in what your demographic, your target audience is. That brings me to the number 2 point. Who is your target audience? Casting a wide net is great, but you're not here to be Walmart. Really. I mean, in the abstract, it sounds wonderful, right? I want to talk to everyone. I want to give everyone my business card because I don't want to alienate anyone. But in actuality, what is your brand? Who are you trying to appeal to, right? And if you are trying to ignite all these fires, you will burn out. You will burn out. So I always tell people, so let's take Pauline for an example. Who's your target demographic?
Executive men and women.
And women. And what age range?
45 to 55. maybe
College
60.
educated.
College educated.
Okay, C-suite individuals.
Executive suite, yeah.
Right, okay. So you want to go after that brand. You don't need to be at mixers where there's 20-somethings who are millennials. No offense to the millennials, but that's not what you're going after, right? And so instead of spending so much time on that, even your website that we were just talking about, gear it towards that demographic. Make it appealing to that demographic. When you exhaust yourself, and remember, you typically don't start with a lot of money, unless you're a trust fund baby and you came into a lot of money. You know, most people start with friends and family around, maybe savings, retirement, whatever it was that, you know, you used to start your business. You want to be strategic in how you spend that money. So you want to target the demographic that best fits your brand, and you are your own brand. So you know who you're talking to, you know what interests you, and you know why you went into the business. Go after that. So for Pauline, for example, she wants to target professionals. So she should be at professional mixers. She should be giving her card out to, if she's gonna be in Vegas, to casino people, to people in, and I don't mean people behind the cage, I mean people who are in C-suite management, right? She should be going to the business magazine events. Doesn't have to spend a lot of money, but she should not be going to the free events. Because people and companies with that sort of budget are not gonna be there. Make sense? They're not gonna be there, okay? So I really want to re-imprint your idea of who you're casting your net to, because you're gonna get so exhausted if you don't, you will fall off the boat, guaranteed, guaranteed. And that's super important. The other crucial thing that I see time and time again, and it becomes a pattern sometimes, and people start off with the right intentions, is that when they want to present themselves, they do it for free. That's okay in the beginning. It's okay. You can be at events, Sean, I'm sure this resonates with you. You can be at events and someone says, do you want to speak? Sure, it's a great volunteer opportunity, absolutely. Will it make my CV look better? Will it help my body of work look better on my website? Can I use it as a testimonial? Sure. Again, be strategic. But when you're doing so much for free, it dilutes your brand, because people say, why should I pay her or him when I can get it for free? So I think that's something that more people need to be mindful of. Communication, telling them what you need. Listen, I have a speaker's fee. I have a travel fee. Maybe if they don't have the budget, you can do a quid pro quo of some sort. You can say, listen, I'll talk about your business. You can't pay me, but I really need to be at your event. Maybe you can give me a booth for free. So you can do things like that. It doesn't always have to equate to money, but there should be something that makes it look like you're not just giving it away. That's super important. But you have to ask for it, because people are gonna try and take it for free all the live long day. Right, Pauline? Okay. Next is communication, and I had a much longer spiel about that, but I'm gonna let Pauline, I'm gonna segue into Pauline here, because I think her talk about the components of communication between men and women is something that we could all stand to listen to and learn from, whether we're business owners or students or whatever. Pauline Crawford.
Oh, thank you. Have we lost Michael?
Oh, he had
Daddy duties.
Daddy duties. Oh.
Babies. Baby.
I don't know whether you knew, but Michael has a little 5-week-old baby.
Oh my gosh.
Yes, that's why he's gone. That's such a shame.
Why
What
you
about
go?
you? Got a mixed audience. Okay, where's Kate gone? I'm going to find out how this works here. So, I'm just going to have some pictures. Okay. There she is.
You
See, when you get to this age, you both get deaf and blind.
It sucks to be.
It's so wonderful. Now, I'm British, as some of you know, probably guessed, and I like Earl Grey tea, and I managed to pour Earl Grey tea on my computer on Saturday afternoon.
Oh my gosh.
Which he didn't like, curiously. I'm just going to have a few ideas here to help us. Okay? There. So I've written this book called Magical Conversations, and I've been known, apart from being British and throwing stuff on my computer and doing all terrible things like that, and that was really serious on Saturday, you can imagine it. I was given the title of the Ambassador of Magical Conversations by my daughter, who denies this now, by the way. But anyway, that's another story. But this happened in 2008. And I can't even remember what I was doing to bring this accolade from her, but there was something that I did that helped her feel better about what she was doing. So I produced a little card, and it was done in very scrolly kind of ambassadorial writing. And all it said was the Ambassador of Magical Conversations, Pauline Crawford. And this was a time when I was in England. I hadn't married my American. I had no idea I was going to travel around the world. I was in a I'm going to live in England forever kind of mode. And what was interesting was I took this card to a female network first. And these were all professional women. So we're talking about 2008. So they were a mixture of career professionals and entrepreneurs, probably more career professionals. And I think that makes a difference, because you think you get a different reaction from entrepreneurs than you do from career professionals. A lot of them were, this was in London, so a lot of them were lawyers and finance women, a lot of finance women I used to log around with. Anyway, it was a summer's evening, and I gave out this card, and everybody responded really well to it. Like, oh, that's really interesting. And I didn't explain what it was, and there was no context, and yet they all thought it was a good idea. So it got me thinking, and I thought, well, will men react to it in the same way? So I'm at another garden party, and I don't want you to think that I was always at garden parties, but this was another one, and it was full of lawyers, a mixed group. So this wonderful lawyer client of mine came over, female, and said, oh, hello, da-da-da, glass of wine. And as her husband arrived behind her, she turned to him and said, darling, this is Pauline, she's the Ambassador of Magical Conversation. At which point I kind of died inside, because I had this instinct that he might say, what? What a load of rubbish. He didn't. So the first point in my book is actually about no assumptions. He said, wow, we need that in the law profession. Again, there was no context, nothing, it was just the word. So although I know we've actually had this conversation, haven't we, maybe about if you go into the boardroom of ICI or, you know, Chase Manhattan Bank or whatever it is, and you say magical conversations, will the men go, whoa, you know, what the hell's going on? But in terms of branding, I like it. Now, interesting enough, I'm shifting brands because my original brand is Corporate Heart International, Corporate Heart. And my passion is that men and women should understand each other so well that they get on, not just for the sake of it, but for real sustainable economic reasons. So it's not a nice to have, it's actually something essential now, because even since 2008, and it was very relevant then because I don't know whether you remember what happened in 2008. Lehman Brothers went down, and the newspaper said, if it had been Lehman Sisters, would it have survived? But it drew my attention at the time, because I thought, okay, obviously that's not the case, but what is going on? And since 2008 to now, it's changed immensely again. So we've got, as I say, this tsunami of women arriving and rushing towards the top, but it's still blocked. So how do we get to this place where, you know, we've got a crowd, there's a woman in charge, and everybody's listening, and we're having what I call a magical conversation. So what I say about that is that it's joining every conversation with good intention. Now again, the CEO may not appreciate that, and I say it's without judgment or assumptions, no anger or derision, no coercion to act without mutual consensus. Now I'll ask you, is that easy to achieve? No, depends on the group that's in the room. And again, it's changing because we've not only got men and women, we've got millennials, we've got 5 generations now at work. So when I was a kid, that wasn't the case. You know, generations were changing every 25 years, now they're changing almost every 5 years. So you've got even the 30-year-olds who say they're millennials. When you look at the 20-year-olds, yes, it's different again, isn't it? So you've got all of these different generations, and you overlay LGBT, race, culture. I lived in Malaysia for 4 years. I know about different cultures, not every part of the world, but all those things make a difference to the conversations we have. So how do we get away from judgments? Is it easy? I want you to think about whether or not you have any difficult conversations in your life. Is there anybody devoid of difficult conversations? I suspect not. So there's always somebody or something. So it's all about the language that we use, and what I say is, who's around the table? So as well as all the things that Mimi was referring to and our business position, we've now got to be very aware there's lots of different marketplaces out there. So I lived for 14 months in California, very different experience to being in Las Vegas since March. And I have to say that, and I really like California, but the first time I came across a red carpet, which was a 12 by 8 foot piece of red carpet with a backdrop, and somebody said, this is the red carpet experience, I kind of went very British, and I said, oh, I can't go with it. So all of my cultural differences are coming in. I'm starting to make judgments, and it's trying to get away from that and look at what is the context of creating that circle. And it's very specific that it's a circle, because a circle is, you know, if I had my way, I would change every single boardroom table to a circular table. I mean, I think King Arthur had it right. You know, he knew what he was doing, because what happens with a round table?
No one's at the head.
No one's at the head, and we start becoming aware of some sense of equality. Now we hear an awful lot of equality stuff going on about men and women. So how do we get away from judgments when we've got such a kind of crazy life? It's very easy to fall into it, judgments, and behind that is assumptions. So in the first chapter in my book, you'll find out it's about no assumptions. Now it's almost impossible to do that on an absolutely 100% level. So forgive yourselves when you do make assumptions, you know, but to work on how can I quickly get round, how can I be open-minded to whoever's around my table. Just quickly on the facts, we've got 500 Fortune 500 companies. There's only one that has an equal board and a woman running it. Do you know where it is?
Yeah.
Would you guess? I mean, if you know, you know, but if you can't guess, it's General Motors.
Oh.
Wow.
And that's a wow, because General Motors is a very male
Sure.
organization. And in the 500, Fortune 500, there's only 30 female CEOs. And this is not shareholder boards. And you know, we live in a world where there are disagreements between men and women. But I think also one of the challenges is that we're so consumed by all the stuff, and like you alluded to, maybe as well, like there's so many groups and there's so much going on and there's so much coming at us, and you know, we use Google as our Bible, and you know, is that really the truth? But you know, I'll go to it immediately for a piece of information. When I was a kid, that wasn't available. Was life better then? I don't know. It's all about being in the moment and going along with how the world is changing. So we got a situation where I believe that we need to understand the jigsaw pieces that are around the table. Now, the reason I focus on gender, and just as an observation, and take this as an observation of being in America, there's a lot of attention in the diversity and inclusion arena about race and racial differences. And I've even had D&I people who say, no, the racial diversity, we've sorted men and women out. And I'm thinking, no, we haven't. You know, there is still some very basic biological differences, and it gets caught up in the LGBT agenda as well. So when I'm talking about putting these jigsaw pieces together, I'm talking about behaviour. How do we behave with each other, irregardless of all these different diversities? So it could be age, culture, sexual orientation, gender, or whatever it is. So for me, and I hope you agree, magical conversations are not pie in the sky. They're actually mindful and meaningful. And we have to start by understanding ourselves. So, here's a group of nice mixed people and different ages, and obviously a very happy picture. But we know that there are lots of blocks. So I want to actually introduce you to a very simple value creation cycle. I shared this with Sandy the other day, and it's fundamental to everything in my life, so I want to just share it with you, is that the only person you can really look after, and only, is yourself. So there's huge numbers of transformational programs all across the world, the country, from Tony Robbins to everybody. And yeah, we can look in the mirror. When I was an image consultant, you could look in the mirror and help me to dress properly, wear the right colours, this sort of thing. But how they felt about that was really important. You can dress somebody, but if they don't really understand what's happening and why it is them, it's only surface. So the next part of the arrow is all your relationships. Hi there! So the only thing you can do is to think about, who am I in that relationship? So I want to, if you think about all the relationships in your life, do you have difficult relationships in your life? We're not going to do it now, but I want you to think of a very simple exercise. You put yourself in the middle of the page and you put all the relationships round and you just score them 0 to 10. It's a very simple way of understanding what the ups and downs are. Now it could be also your relationship to other things like politics or the weather or your financial situation or anything. But the last arrow is the we arrow. And a lot of people are talking about we. So we're all human beings, so we don't need to worry about diversity. That's another thing that I hear. But actually it matters. It matters because if we value differences, I believe then we can understand the magic of what comes together. I just want to clear up what magic means to me. Magical conversations mean it's about making the unbelievable believable. Is that okay? So how many of you watch magicians? They're like Penn and Teller and all this stuff. They do what they do ridiculously amazing things, and you think that couldn't possibly happen. They just passed a metal something through a piece of glass. Now we know there's a trick, but when we're watching it, we go, I really saw that happen. So that for me is the goal, is to understand yourself and value everything about you. Yeah? And you've all got natural gifts. So, do you all know what your own natural gift is? Sean does. So what's yours?
Listening.
Yeah, tell me.
Listening.
What?
One is listening.
I
That's
don't think
natural
right.
gift.
She can't listen.
You have to speak up. Okay, what's yours, Barbara?
Language.
Language. You're a language reader. What about you, Jill?
Well, I would say my gift is to not just listening, but also to be able to feel what the other person feels.
Empathy.
That's good. What about you, Sandy?
Communication, but listening as well as speaking.
So, anybody good at cooking? I mean, there are other gifts as well. So you might be. So
Who's good at cooking?
So what's good is that you talked
I'm
about
doing
these
that.
you talked about sort of behavioural traits, but also there's gifts that you have. Some people are very good at drawing, or music, or mechanical things, or persuasion, or
Computers.
being organised. So these are skills that you don't get taught at school. You're actually born with them, and this is part of who you are, knowing yourself, value. So I call this a value creation cycle. It's a very Buddhist principle that unless you know yourself and your value, you can't understand other people's values. So then you get into things that Koffee talks about, which is, seek to understand in order to be understood. What can you tune into? So what happens when you meet somebody? You usually say, so what do you do? And we get into this doing bit. But if you say, what are your values in your life? What do you value? So it's a double-edged thing. the values you have and also the value you have as a gift. So I was told at school that I'd never get anywhere because I talk too much at school. I think she was probably wrong, but there you go. So what do we add value to the community that we're in? And then that's important when you're in a business, because the business is in that we part. It could be your family, it could be any community. But so many people, and often women, do focus on how does that work out there? How do I take value from my community without understanding their value here? And I don't mean necessarily the females in the room, but that is something that generally women don't see themselves as valuable as they could do. So my quick example about this in the boardroom is that I helped a woman get into a non-exec position who was very, very efficient. She passed the interview with the CEO, but when she went into the meeting, she started trying to make friends with all the men because she was the only woman, and she made the coffee. Was that a big mistake?
No, yeah.
She was just being friendly, which is what women do. But it put her into a situation where the men said, oh, that's the only value that she adds to this.
She was selling her coffee.
Unless you were selling the coffee, yes. But what happened was that I said to her, what do you think the CEO was missing that he saw in your interview? And she realized that she hadn't taken her value back into that scenario. She hadn't been a woman and a good business person and the CFO that she'd been employed to do. So this is very important, because anytime you feel that you're in a difficult situation and having a difficult conversation, a non-magical conversation, who do you blame? Now you might blame the other person, but you might also blame yourself. Now, do you all know difficult people? Are any of you difficult?
At times.
At times.
On occasion.
I'm sure. I'm sure someone might say that.
Yeah. But the truth is, when we're having a difficult conversation, we're both difficult at that point in time. And so if we haven't understood each other, that's when we're going to get into trouble. So just quickly, I'm not going to use all these, but we're doing this for a good reason in business, is to come into the branding bit, is to be known for the right reasons, for creating value, and not trying to pretend to be somebody else. So women not pretending to be men, but also understanding that men are in the room and they want to do something in a different way. So what I want to share with you is what I major on, which is called a gender dynamics map. So bear with me, I'm going to give you one that you can actually use. So if you want to, I'm going to give you one each. So you can play around with this, with some of these things. But essentially, are men and women different?
Yes.
So I'm going to put men in a square. Are you okay with that? It's a metaphor. It's not. I'm not putting you in a prison. But what's interesting is that I thought about this morning. Do any of you know the Vitruvian Man?
Yes.
Do you know what I'm talking about? You know, Leonardo da Vinci's.
Oh.
Yeah. Anyway, it talks about the fact that it's in a square and a circle. So the other shape that I'm going to introduce you to is a circle. I mean, it's circular here. It's more circular on your illustration. Now, if you remember nothing else about how to have a magical conversation, remember this, is that men generally live in that square and talk in very straight lines and go yes, no, either or. They want to find solutions to our problems. Now this is very, very hard drive basic. And women are very circular, and we live in feelings and circuits and menstrual cycles. We won't mention what men have, but it's different. But yes, you know what I mean. So we go off at tangents and we have lots of different ideas. So this is why these shapes are really important, because conversations can be circular and conversations can be straight. So I want you to imagine a difficult conversation where you're trying to negotiate something as a woman. So I'm just focusing on the women today. Is that okay? But they're trying to negotiate with you as a man. And the man is thinking in a straight line, and he's very busy, he's the CEO, and he's only in one box. And you're coming in with a circuit and circle and circle and circle and lots of great ideas, which are absolutely fabulous. Can he hear you?
No.
So that's one of the basics to understand, and what I say is, this is like two different computers. So this is like a PC and this is like a Mac. And we know that Windows works on both machines, allegedly. But Windows is an operating system that goes across. But when the program runs into trouble, it's often the hard drive that's making the difference. Because one of the challenges, and I'm going to put this in now for you to think about it, and I'm often asked this, and I'm going to do an interview on this soon, is about how women get on with other women. So this is not just Mars and Venus and how men and women get on, it's how we all get on, because there are lots of different types out there now, and it's not the same as even 2008 when Lehman Brothers went down. So if we look at it, I'm going to give you a visual that this is how we're talking. So if we're talking in circles and we want to talk to men, we've got to talk to one of their boxes. Okay, so I'm being simplistic here. But if they're on a topic and you try to come in with another topic, they won't hear it. So it makes no sense, because if we don't get the connection, what does the man decide? And I'm talking about in the business and personal. What does the man decide then?
You're rubbish.
Tunes them out to just
Tunes
leave.
them out.
Yeah.
That you're useless. I mean, I'm gonna be cruel, but they think you're useless, you're stupid. Why have I got women here? You know. So remember, there's only 30 companies in the FTSE 500 that have women CEOs, and yet 75% of the workforce in American companies is female. I'm a mathematician and I love simultaneous equations, so this is why I'm very keen to understand this. So the reason why men have closed the doors to the possibility of lots of women coming in, because they don't know what the hell will come in. And I believe that if we give them the right dialogue and the right strategy, and you give them the saleable sustainability that we know can happen when men and women work together, then there may be a possibility that they will open those doors. And that's part of my passion, because I think there's a lot of anxiety as all these women are swooping up. Now very soon, I know Sandy and I are going, I don't know whether you're attending one, or Sean, there is 2020 women on board, I don't know whether you're going to that. But that whole exercise, I am concerned that it comes into what you said, Mimi, about huge number of women's organisations.
Well, that's a little bit different, because their objective is to put more women on boards.
Yes.
So this is a little bit different.
It's a bit different, and that's why I want to be part of it. But the challenge is that we can hone every woman's skills, and lots of women are competent and have all the right credentials, but the men are still not opening the boardroom door for other reasons. I do believe it is possible to do it, but we need to get both parties talking to